Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. This is the show where we answer your questions about movies, TV shows, comic books, lanterns, spiders, mans, and so much more. I'm your host, DJ Wooldridge. With me, as always, is Roxy Stryer. Hello, Roxy.
Sup, DJ?
We got a good one today. I always like a week when they're like, hey, here's this new trailer or whatever. I'm like, oh, thank you, God, thank you.
Thank you. Especially but people are divided on this trailer.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to talk about, but it's especially helpful during the time that we're in, where we're kind of out of this award season and going into the blockbuster season, where it's kind of like a dead zone, where you're like, I hope a good show drops or a trailer drops or something.
Speak for yourself. Television is the best that it's been right now, but I do know what you mean. It's not the kind of stuff that typically we cover. But
yes.
But my little Love is Blind loving heart is freaking out over the wedding.
I found out, I don't know what you're talking about, but hold on one second. I found out that the person that created Heated Rivalry, the obviously it's adapted, but the person that adapted it, that's the executive producer of the show, is the co-creator of Letterkenny and Shoresy, which, if you don't remember, Shoresy was the hockey show.
They're all the Canada shows.
Yeah, but I was like that, and he plays a character on Letterkenny. But it just blew my mind that somebody posted about it. Like, they posted an image of him from Letterkenny because his character's a bit of a colorful. It's a colorful character, and they're like, this guy created Heated Rivalry. I'm like, is that true? And I went down the rabbit hole. I'm like, oh my God, good for him.
I think you watching this with your wife is worth your time.
You know what? Maybe I would imagine that the tone will be very different from Shoresy and Letterkenny, but
I've seen a few episodes of Letterkenny. It's very, very different tonally. However, I do feel as if like understanding character is and what we want as an audience is similar.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But anyway, that was just a fun little anecdote about that. But this week, what we're talking about is the Lanterns trailer that dropped, and we're also talking about a bit of news that we punted from last week, which is that there's rumblings that they're going to reboot their Spider-Verse, their expanded Spider-Verse without Spider-Man, and we're going to talk about how that could work. But before we get into that, I like to read comments from our previous video where we were talking about Night of the Seven Kingdoms finale. And we're going to start with Super True to You says, for Game of Thrones, anything situated in the past is fair game for what I want to see, such as Robert's Rebellion, Old Valyria, Aegon's Conquest, these big moments that we heard about but just never saw, more about the free cities. Literally, the world is so vast and has so much meat on the bone that I don't mind coming back for it when there's a good acting and action. So Roxy, going through these comments, a lot of people threw out their ideas, and it was just a great reminder of like, wow, I don't know any of the lore of Game. I just don't know if it didn't happen on Game of Thrones. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Even if it did happen on Game of Thrones, I might have forgotten it at this point because I watched that show one time through. It is interesting though, looking at this comment for anything situated in the past is fair game. I haven't heard any diehard Game of Thrones fans really want to venture into the future. I wonder why that is. We get this a lot in Star Wars as well. And I don't know whether it's just because this is what's been written about more and they're more curious about, or whether going into the future brings it into modern day times and people are just not interested.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think for Game of Thrones people specifically, the impression I get is because Martin's done so much with novellas and in these various histories, and so that's stuff that they have familiarity with, whereas he hasn't even finished the Game of Thrones book, so there's not even like a glimmer of what could be ahead. He's not, you know what I mean? So I think it's more based on the source material when it comes to Game of Thrones. But it could be the same thing with Star Wars, where it's just like familiarity of different stuff. But fans, it's interesting. So Mel does reviews. Good for you, Mel. What I know is if George R. R. Martin didn't write it, I don't want it as a show. We've seen what happens when they go off and do their own thing. This might be answering your question, Roxy. I would love a Blackfire Rebellion show. A bunch of bastards from the king that were legitimized and battles ensue. Now that's exciting. See, this is one of those. The Blackfire Rebellion. Sure.
But that sounds Mel cool. Here is saying We've seen what happens when they go off and do their own things um, in regards to the Game of Thrones spinoff, House of the Dragons, or do you think she's saying it with other franchises? We've seen that because they're
I
beefing about House of the Dragons.
I think this, I would imagine, I don't want to speak for you, Mel, but I would imagine based on other criticisms I've seen from fans, there's referring to the end of Game of Thrones, where like once they ran out of book,
Yep.
people feel like it went off the rails. I don't know that I feel the same way.
What was, in all fairness, I did not like the finale. I know you did. I
Yeah.
did not. But what were they supposed to do? Never air a final season until he wrote it?
Yeah, and also I think something Game of Thrones fans I haven't seen really contend with is everybody said George R. R. Martin told them the ending, so they know the end. They did the ending. That is what the book, whether that's how, if he ever finishes them, how it ends up ending. That was the agreed upon ending when they were making it. So there's a chance, book readers, you might not like the book ending too.
It's kind of the best case scenario for him that he got to test out an ending and then he was like, oh, you guys didn't like it? It's not me.
Yeah, well, and it's tricky too because I also think this is a tricky situation in that so, and I might be speaking out of turn, but if I remember what happened correctly, there was a trilogy of video games called Mass Effect that I loved, and they built on each other. And the third one, the ending leaked, and people didn't like it, so they panicked and changed it, and people didn't like that. This is another situation where I actually didn't mind the ending. I don't know. I guess I don't get as hung up on that stuff as most people do, apparently. But in another similar situation was the 0 Hour event, which was a DC Comics 90s event where there was a villain. What was his name? Was it Monarch? Anyway, whatever. There was the villain for the event, and his identity was a mystery.
His name was maybe Mark?
Monarch or something like something. What it doesn't matter. The guy didn't. He doesn't really factor in post zero hour. Anyway, his true identity leaked, and so to like cover their tracks, they changed it, and the change the way it was worked. It was supposed to be Captain Atom, and then they changed it to be Hawk from Hawk and Dove, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. And so I think it's one of those like, yes, he got to change the ending, but I do think panic changing course doesn't stick to your guns. You made a choice.
I think it depends on for what we're talking about. Like, it wasn't one thing that a lot of people didn't like. It was who ended up on the throne that people didn't love. It was the twist. It was what happened with Danny, not twist. The development of Danny's character that people did not like. So there was many things, and you could keep some, change others. It just I know it worked for you, and it also worked for Christian Harloff, which is funny because you two are the two that I talk to the most about TV and movies.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, wow, I did not like that ending.
Nope. Yeah, and then a lot of people didn't. I remember the event I went to. Sam and I were talking to somebody who was just like, "Yeah, I was just reading this. There was these Reddit threads before, and I just really liked what they said." And I'm like, well, that's a you problem, man. Like, that's you set up an ending in your brain. That's not the creator's fault. You know what I mean? And that's not everybody, obviously.
For sure.
It's just interesting how divisive it was. A lot of divisive endings out there. Stranger Things. Just don't, you know what? George R. R. Martin's got the right idea. Just don't end it. That way you don't have to worry about it. Logan Kelly 88889 says, oh, so this is about the Paramount buying Warner Brothers. Good news, DJ. This November, Paramount is releasing Ebenezer, A Christmas Carol, directed by Ty West and starring Johnny Depp as Scrooge. Paramount has also tapped Max Landis to write a new G.I. Joe movie for them, No Consequences. So the only thing Max Landis is qualified for is to jump headfirst into a wood chipper. The one thing I want to talk about is this Ebenezer movie, Roxy, which really bums me out because Ty West directed.
I just did them for the Real Rejects. They finally just aired all this week. X, Pearl, and Maxine. I just did them.
Yeah, Maxine's not great, but
X Maxine might have been my Maxine.
Oh, really?
I love Maxine.
X and Pearl are awesome.
I think it goes X, Maxine, Pearl for me, but I love them all.
Yeah, they're great, and Ty West was back because he's done a lot of movies that I really liked, House of the Devil, this was like his big, and now he's like doing, and I love The Christmas Carol as a story, and you're doing it with Johnny Depp, as Scrooge. So that bums me out. Here's what else bums me out. Roxy, let me read you some of this cast members in this movie. We got Ian McKellen. We got Daisy Ridley. We got Andrea Riceborough. We got Rupert Grint. And it's like, here's the one that bums me out the most. Tremel Tillman.
Okay,
and it's
let me say one thing though.
Yes.
And you're not gonna like this. And I understand. And this is not my favorite decision that's ever been made.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm already regretting saying it. At least he's a very good actor. And I'm only saying that because sometimes we bring people back, like a Gina Carano, and it's like, wait, but I didn't even, before everything, I didn't even really feel like seeing her. Now, that doesn't justify bringing him back, but I bet he does a good job.
Well, but let me ask you this. When was the last time Johnny Depp was in something that you liked him in? Because I think for me, it's going back all the way to like the first Pirates. So that's like 20 years of stuff that.
Let's look.
I might be memory holding some
BO stuff for a while with that lizard person that people loved.
Ringo, that wasn't bad. Yeah.
No, I've liked pretty much everything he's done, honestly. Like, that's just me being 100% transparent with my feelings on. In terms of, okay, let's see. I didn't see a lot of this stuff. What is this Marilyn Manson kill for me thing? I don't know. I did like him in the Pirates movies. He was amazing in Black Mass, despite me not loving the movie. He did a great job. Bulger. I didn't see Yoga Hosers, which just comes up all the time still. I thought he was good in Into the Woods. And
I think I saw post Pirates. I saw Sweeney Todd, and he's good in that. But it's just one of those.
He's excellent in.
Yeah, man, it's just one of those, like, you look at this, and here's the thing, I understand, right? Especially if you're somebody like Tremel Tillman, who's pretty hot right now, but still relatively new on the scene comparatively.
Was Johnny cast when Tremel signed on?
Yeah, he was the first one.
Okay.
So I get it. This is a hard town. You're gonna take work or whatever. But also for me, reading all these people, it's like, oh yeah, nobody believes in anything out here. No, nobody cares about anything. Really.
I hear you. I think that a lot of people didn't follow the trial and just feel like he's completely innocent. That's wild. The trial was the most disgusting. I can't even believe, I watched like thousands of hours of this, and not one feeling that I had was really like these guys, like about it. It was really, really tough to watch. But that being said, the general consensus, whether we like it or not, was Johnny is innocent and got screwed. That is not my thoughts.
It's also not what the
and it's also not legally what happened.
Yeah.
Especially not in the UK. In the United States, it was a little more split.
Shocker.
Right. But just saying, like, I don't know. I think this is a really weird move. I wasn't clamoring for this movie in general, but then I just saw all of Ty West's movies and I'm like, oh my God, I think he's amazing. And also it just does feel weird for him as a director who, to me, my favorite part about Ex Maxine and Pearl is that he has such perspective on the industry. Like, he clearly like has such grit and like here's where people have gone wrong and here's what it takes and here's the things. So it kind of feels like it undermines the message of his trilogy to be like, and yet sometimes you gotta have who you gotta have. Like, it's like, wait, what are you?
And also, did you need? You could have gotten somebody else to be Ebenezer. Like, you could have gotten a British actor to be Ebenezer. Anyway,
it's a weird move. It's a weird move.
It's as much as I love that trilogy, I will not be watching Ebenezer. So them's the comments. Before we get into news, I do want to take a second to talk about a charity month. This is technically the charity of last month, but I haven't had a chance to dig in and find out what we're going to be doing for March. So once again, if you missed Danger Boy, if you missed the Kickstarter for that, stay tuned for Volume 2 coming out soon. If you missed that, you can pick up copies from Sean Peacock, who's the artist of Danger Boy. You can pick up copies from his web store, or if you see him in conventions. Either way, all the proceeds from that, all the money that will be going to him and I, is going to be going to Monarca. Monarca MN, which is part of Unidos MN, and Monarca is a coalition of thousands of workers, students, people of faith, parents, clergy, business owners, teachers, caregivers, and young people. They are a movement that has trained over 28,000 everyday Minnesotans as neighborhood observers to help protect people's rights where it matters most on the ground in our communities. And you can find links to both Sean's store or Monarca in the description. So please go check that out. Now, hopping over to news. Well, real quick, Mike Joyce says he's great in Edward Scissorhands. Yeah, that was a long time ago. He was great in a lot of...
Listen, I can make fun of him all I want, but I can't make fun of him as an actor. I think he's so good.
Roman Polanski made a lot of movies that I like. I ain't checking out the next one he does.
100% fair. And again, it's not me justifying it. It's just me saying of the people that we've been bringing back.
Yeah.
At least I think he's...
Yeah.
We bring back people that are not good all the time, and I'm like, what? Just let them stay.
Yeah, he needs to go make a. He needs to go what Daily Wire. He should go make a Daily Wire movie. Anyway, moving over to news. This is kind of technically both news things, but DC Studios has gifted us with our first look at Lanterns. It was supposed to drop Thursday. I guess the trailer leaked, so they dropped it Wednesday. And as Roxy pointed out, this trailer has proven pretty divisive. Roxy, before I get into my thoughts, I'd love to know your thoughts about the new trailer for Lanterns. It's coming to HBO, I believe, in the fall.
So, did it say
I'll
August?
look it up.
I think it said August.
Which August? Is that summer? Which
August
season? We live in the West Coast, so I don't know seasons.
Yeah, August is still summer, and
okay.
And in case you missed it, we're about to turn back the clocks or spring them forward. So we're about to get sunshine.
Oh, Roxy, I have a little child with a pretty stable timetable, so I'm aware of of when the clock moves.
So sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, August 2026. You're right.
So okay. I luckily watched this trailer before I started engaging in the internet's opinion on this trailer. I was like, yes. I love these two together. Look at their chemistry. This is exactly what I was hoping for. I feel like it was, that's all it really was a little bit of a chemistry read between the two of them. We were seeing how they play off of each other.
Yeah.
It was pretty short. There wasn't that much plot going on. We just got a bit on their dynamic and where they're both at in their, dare I say, careers.
Yeah.
In their journeys.
Yeah.
So I was like, yes, I've been really looking forward to this. Then I go to the comments and immediately it's, what is this? Another season of True Detective? Been at this for this many months with no ring. This is bullshit. These costumes suck. The lighting is horrible. This is me talking about the internet. And I was like, I've spent enough hours online today. I actually don't need to keep reading any of this because I just found it to be a little bit of a joy and exciting. Intrigued to know what you thought, DJ.
So when I watched it, ever since they were like, it is because the True Detective thing, it's like True Detective. I'm like, I don't know if that's what I would do with Green Lantern. Although I don't now, when I was thinking back to my previous thoughts, I was like, well, kind of my pitch for a Green Lantern show has always been like, make it like Men in Black. Like, you've got the space people out there, and then whoever you choose to be your Earth ones are doing Earth problems. So it's not too dissimilar. I would just veer more towards Men in Black, which is still a little spacey, as opposed to True Detective, which is not very spacey at all. So watching it, similar. I like Kyle Chandler. We all know, I like Aaron Pierre a lot. Ever since Rebel Ridge, I'm like, this is the guy.
You've been riding for him since the second we saw that movie. So
once I saw it, and they're like, he's John Stewart. I'm like, I'm in. and they're, like you said, their dynamic is great. Watching, I was like, it's a tease, and our ongoing question, is it a teaser or is it a trailer? To your point, not a lot of plot stuff, so teaser, short, no plot stuff, teaser, I think is where we're at. Their dynamic, awesome. Do I wish we saw a little bit more ring sling, a little more spacey alien, a little more stuff that I associate with Green Lantern? I was like, yeah, this isn't quite what I want, but I like their dynamic. The creative team on board is interesting. I do like that it feels different than Superman and Supergirl, at least just from these teasers we've gotten. I like that. That's been something I've been asking for. So I don't know that this teaser sold me, but I'm still very interested and very much rooting for this show.
Yeah.
And then I would, but I had my trepidations, and then I also went online, and just it was so antagonistic. I was like, whoa, everybody slow down, man. Because one thing, we get one brief glimpse of the suit, which is like on a little suit rack, which is a little weird. And people were flipping out about this. It's brown. It's like, no, there's green in there. And also, we saw with Guy Gardner that they wear practical suits. And also, I should mention that when they first promoted this show, the art that they used to promote it is from a graphic novel series called Green Lantern Earth 1. And it is very similar to that version of the suit. And it's also worth mentioning that Green Lantern Earth 1 is pretty good. It's a pretty good comic. So my reaction to the reaction is everybody slow down. Everybody cool your jets.
I agree with you, DJ. It's like when I saw this, I liked it, but then I feel like sometimes I have to double down because I see how angry people are, and then I'm like, no, I really liked it. And it's like, I don't know if I really liked it. I just liked it and think that you guys are all like super aggro. But everybody's entitled to their opinion on how this looks. And I do understand totally what you're saying, DJ. Is this the first look that a lot of people were hoping for when you think of a Green Lantern show?
Yeah.
No. We get a couple references. There's that line about there's even a squirrel or whatever.
Yeah.
So we get a couple of references to things, or like that brief glimpse of the suit. But for the most part, this could be a show that was not in the DC and that was not about the Green Lanterns based on the teaser that we saw. It was just really like these two, one of them's like this and one of them's like this, and here's how they got together, or like here's what they're talking about. So I like television. So I thought it was a good teaser for a TV show where they're trying to sell me on the dynamic between two people. Because I feel like this was like a very big DC teaser or a big Green Lanterns teaser that made my nerd heart excited. Not really. This more catered to the TV girl in me, which maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know what audience. They're probably hoping for the biggest audience possible, but I'm guessing they're kind of like, we want that HBO audience, not
exactly
those nerds.
It is an HBO audience. That's important to keep in mind. And also remember that the Green Lantern brand is kind of toxic off of the movie. You know what I mean? So like they're gonna go as far away from that as possible. And I do think for fans, the fact that they mentioned Chip, like they don't name check him, but they mentioned there's a squirrel Green Lantern. All the fun stuff is there. Right. And also this isn't people are treating it like we haven't already seen a Green Lantern in this universe. We saw Guy Gardner. The Green Lanterns are the Green Lanterns. You know what I mean? Like they are like that. And also Nathan Fillion is supposed to show up in this show. And that because we see this dynamic, and this dynamic has a very specific vibe. I'm very excited to see what he's like in this dynamic, because he's coming in with a very different energy.
Do you know what his involvement in the show is?
No, I will say, I mean, Nathan Fillion said this, so I hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn or anything, or like spoiling stuff for people, but I believe he said he doesn't have any scenes with Kyle Chandler. His scenes are only with Aaron Pierre, which leads me to believe Kyle Chandler's not going to be in the show as much as it looks like. It's going to be more of the Aaron Pierre show.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I'm actually okay with that. I love Kyle Chandler, but this doesn't have to be a buddy show in order to work.
Yeah, and here's the other thing I want to point out. If you go, it's not like they're keeping this stuff a secret. Like if you go to the cast list, Sinestro's going to be in the show, and he's played by Ulrich Thompson, who, if people don't know, he played one of the antagonists in Banshee. That's perfect casting. He will be great as Sinestro. So again, it's not like this teaser is very grounded. Perhaps I would say for the DC fans and us, maybe too grounded. But it's not like they're avoiding the Green Lantern stuff. Like I saw a lot of people flipping out that Hal was flying without a green oar or whatever. Who cares? Like at the one bit we got of him flying looked good. Like who gives a shit? Like I don't care about. I don't know. It feels like people just want to be mad.
Sometimes.
And what's weird is like normally, this isn't always the case, but normally when we see people like ripping into one of the James Gunn DCU joints, they're former Snyder fans. Snyder fans should eat this up. This looks dark and gritty and serious. Isn't this what you want?
I'm looking on IMDb right now after you just said that, and Nathan Fillion is listed for 8 of the 8 episodes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just knew he was in it, and I saw his quote on it.
It doesn't necessarily mean he's in 8 episodes, but
Yeah,
that's what he's credited for on IMDb right now, which
I'm
that's
just because you've got that. Just really
he's a
at
third
first,
build person right now. Kyle Chandler at 8 episodes, then Aaron Pierre at 8 episodes, and Nathan Fillion at 8 episodes.
when I first heard you said, I'm like, that's fine. He's Guy Gardner's there. That's fine. Let's acknowledge that. But now that you get to see this dynamic and the very subdued version of dick measuring between these two guys, I'm like, I'm actually really excited to see Guy in this dynamic, because I think the one thing that would probably unite these Hal and John is they probably both don't like Guy to
Yeah,
the
that's
degree
funny.
that people were like, well, he says he's the only human Green Lantern. Yeah, he probably doesn't talk to Guy. He probably knows Guy exists, doesn't like Guy. So if you asked me, he'd be like, yeah, I'm the only human Green Lantern. You know what I mean? Like I to me that totally checks out vibe wise. So I don't know. I think I understand everybody. Again, I kind of wanted something that felt a little bit more Green Lantern-y in a teaser, but I'm very much on this show's side. And again, kind of in a similar way that I am with like a lot of Marvel projects, where even if I don't like the Marvel project, at least the casting's good. I'm stoked. It's Aaron Pierre as John. It was exact, because again, I'm not even a huge John guy. Yeah, like Kyle Rayner's my Green Lantern.
I know.
John doesn't really interest me until now. Now I'm really into John. I'm excited to see this journey.
I mean, he does really get to make who John is. It's not like
Yeah.
we've had so many iterations of John that it's like this can't possibly be the person that people are thinking about. So that's cool. I also do want to point out that again, when talking about this being more of a TV teaser as opposed to a DC teaser, I'm a huge diehard Damon Lindelof girl. I ride for him heavy. He's made of all of his shows, of all my favorite shows, he's made 2 of my favorite shows of all time. So, and
Yeah.
one of my top 3 shows of all time in The Leftovers, not to mention that he's already handled the comic book property Watchmen to a point that I know some people now have started to turn on it, but I loved that show and I thought they did a great job with it. And then not to mention the other producer, Chris Mundy, who did Ozark, which I think is at its best rivals Breaking Bad, and also was a producer of True Detective. So these are veteran TV people.
And I think it's also worth mentioning 100%. And I think it's also worth mentioning what's been one of the biggest shows in the past like 10 plus years, Game of Thrones. And we had to wait a whole season before we got that show didn't do the supernatural shit until the end of season 1, whereas we got the dragons. So especially with something as big as Green Lantern, I don't hate the impulse of like, you got to earn that. We're going to start small. These 2 guys, low key thing. We're not going to start off full. And I also think it's with the amount of money like places like Disney have been blowing on Star Wars shows. It's like, yeah, we're not going to do the full space thing right off the bat. That's not what we're going to do with this show. Yeah, we're not going to do, like, for me, like, throw a Kilowog in there.
We will see some space stuff. There's no.
Well, again, Sinestro's in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like Sinestro's in the show. They're not. It's not like they mention Chip. They mention there's a squirrel Green Lantern. It's not like they're running from this shit. So that gives me, as the fan in me.
What do you think about this,
hope.
DJ?
Yeah.
This is what the plot is listed as on IMDb. Lanterns follow new recruit John Stewart and Lantern legend Hal Jordan, 2 intergalactic cops drawn into a dark, Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that tells you more than the trailer did, or do you feel like it just tells you?
Well, I mean, I think that's the same thing. For me, I wouldn't necessarily do this 1-to-1 because it takes a character I like off the table. But the inciting incident to there was a big event, Final Crisis, and the inciting incident of that is one of the new gods, Orion, is found dead in a dumpster on Earth. And it's like, that's actually a pretty great setup for a Green. That was a full DC event comic. Everybody's involved, but that's a pretty good setup for a Green Lantern show. like a space god ends up dead in the Midwest. Like, holy shit, you know. So I don't know if it's going to be that, but it is a good way to do a Green Lantern show without blowing your entire. But like, it's just not it. It's a TV show, gang. It's not going to be a billion lanterns running around. And by the way, we did that in a movie and people didn't respond to it. So like I'm all for
Yeah.
starting small. It does raise some questions of like, there's a scene where he's interrogating a guy or they're like running and it's like, you guys have Green Lantern rings. Why do you, it'd be like Superman in his cape, like running to the coffee shop. I was like, well, you're fly. What are you doing?
I did see that comment a lot though. You keep referencing, you've referenced a couple of times the other Green Lantern movie. And, so a lot of people in the comments were like, this is too soon for a Green Lantern show. And I was just like, I can't tell if you guys are being facetious or not, because that's an egregious statement.
Yeah. It's been over the decade, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, also, how long is long enough?
And also, obviously these aren't necessarily the same people, but are these the same people bitching about they're not doing Batman and Wonder Woman? And you want them to slow roll Green Lantern? It was the one guy we didn't do in DC, the DCEU. Yeah, do Green Lantern. So get him in there. So I'm still mad there wasn't a Green Lantern in the Justice League movie. Like, not part of the team we got in the flashback, but
especially if this is focusing on John Stewart. It's like a completely different person.
Yeah. Yes. No. Don't. Why wait? Do it. I say do it. Enter Leonard Kim says, it's been like 15 years too soon, or like about fucking time. I agree.
Yeah. I'm
Big Busta Zero says people just like complaining the internet takes nitpicks and tries to blow them into legitimate criticisms. I also don't know, Roxy, where were you for me, most of this stuff was threads, was where I was seeing a lot of this discourse. My Blue Sky feed does not care about this stuff.
Real Rejects did a trailer reaction, and I edited it and was looking at the comments on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and that's where I was seeing things.
Yeah. That tracks.
Because they liked it. So.
Yeah. Well, how dare they? Mm-hmm. How dare they like it?
Yep.
I'm excited for the show. Again, I think for me, especially given the stuff I've said about Supergirl and stuff like that, I like that it feels different. Because I think for the longevity of this universe, you need to be able to do different things.
I agree with you. Yeah. I have a question because Big Busta asked it, and I was thinking the same thing. I wanted to ask you because you're my big comic book nerdy friend.
Yeah.
Big Busta says, my only question is, why does John not have a ring, but Hal and Guy do? Why exactly does John need to have Hal ring? What do you think about this? Like, how do you feel about if we do the entire season and John does not have a ring, or is there like merit in the comics to when he gets it and that being a big moment, or what's the deal?
Well, typically it's the previous bearer loses it and then a new guy gets it, which is tricky to explain when you've got like 14 human lanterns running around.
Right.
Because normally it's like Hal can't do it, so then it's a guy, but then it goes back to Hal, and then it goes to John, whatever. So a unique thing that I haven't really seen is this idea of training a new lantern without the ring on Earth. That's something we haven't done before, but I think it's to set up this dynamic that we have between the two guys, and I do think it's a smart decision because typically Hal and John are peers. So the idea of having Hal be older and more experienced and John be the hot freshness, I think adds an interesting dynamic there, which also plays into the Men in Black idea that I would have used as my saying that maybe we should make it like that. So I'm not against it. So that's kind of a new angle on it. I'm wondering if they will dive into the idea of like, does Earth need 3 of you guys? Because typically it's like a whole sector. Why all Earth? That's something we like hand wave away in the comics of like why are there like 12 human lanterns? Like who? Whatever. I wonder if the show will get into that.
Just for fun.
Something that did this well was there was a CG animated Green Lantern show that was actually quite good. Unfortunately, nobody watched it, so it got canceled. It was animated. It might have been nobody bought the toys. And they did a good job of kind of justifying, because Hal was like, the plot of that, Hal was in the far reaches of space. So then Guy got the ring because Hal was no longer in his sector. And then Guy got promoted, and then the ring went to John. They had like a reasonable justification for like why this happens this way. So we'll see, but I like Green Lantern as a character. I like these actors. I like the creators behind this. So yes. And I like True Detective. It's just not the touchstone I would use for Green Lantern. So like, there's a good chance I'm probably going to like this show. Alrighty. Speaking of rebooting stuff and whether it's too soon to reboot, we got
Great transition, my dude.
We are going to be talking about this quote from Sony film CEO Tom Rothman. This news story comes from IGN. It was all over the place, but I pulled it from IGN. Who was, let's see here. He was having a conversation with Matt Belloni. That's probably the way you pronounce it. On the Town.
You were just every bully he had in high school.
I know. He just had a traumatic flashback, PTSD flashback. Rothman answered a series of questions with a fairly short yes or no response. When asked, is the larger Spider-Verse dead? He said no. He then confirmed Sony would go back to those films at some point and also affirmed it would be a fresh reboot with new people. Rothman did not provide any further details. So we actually don't have a lot to go on here, but shocker, Sony still wants to milk that Spider-Man brand. So I thought it might be a fun conversation to have. How would you go about this? Is there a way to make this work? Because Roxy, I don't know if you remember all of a year ago, but Morbius and Craven and Madam Webs were not terribly well received.
You didn't even put Madam Web on there, you coward.
I didn't make this one. I pulled that one. Here's Madam Web for everybody. Here they are.
An insane cast.
Yeah. Just so many insane decisions. Roxy, how do you feel about them rebooting their expanded Spider-Verse without Spider-Man?
Okay. Well, I want to answer your question, but before I do, just breaking down, is the largest Sony universe dead? No. That he would go back to the films at some point with a fresh reboot and new people. How is that kind of going back to the films? To me, that's
just the brands is probably more accurate. We'd go back to these brands and try and do something new with them.
Yeah, I just am trying to really read between the lines. Does he mean the same characters, or does he just mean the same universe and new characters?
Ambiguous. So us speculating, we get to decide what he meant. I would imagine. I would say probably different characters, because I think you've poisoned the well. I've got a pitch on how you do Morbius, because I actually don't think doing a Morbius movie was the worst instinct. I think they made a lot of bad decisions around it. But Morbius is a character that people know because he was a big part of the Spider-Man the animated series that people of my generation grew up with. And he held his own comic for a while, as opposed to somebody like Craven, who did not.
Yeah, but I actually kind of feel the same way you're saying about Madam Web. These women actually could have had a very interesting dynamic together, and we never actually get to see Madam Web be Madam Web. We just had the world's worst villain, and
yes,
and the script was horrific. But I'm also kind of with you where the well is so poisoned that I don't know. We just mentioned that Green Lantern people think is too soon. That was 15 years ago, and it's different characters. So it's at what point are Craven, Morbius, Madam Web not persona non grata? I think Venom is different because Venom A is more culturally popular, and B, the people actually enjoyed those movies for one reason or another, and
they made relatively well. Yeah.
So and we've seen Venom in other movies as well in the past, so people just have more of a familiarity with Venom, and I don't think that he's untouchable in the same way that the other three characters are.
Yeah,
but genuinely, when he's at some point we'll go back, at what point do you think, DJ, you would be cool with them touching Morbius, Craven, or Madam Web with a recast and reboot?
Well, okay, I think you throw away Madam Web. You just toss that away and you replace that with, because what was the big, if you pull up, you guys are watching the video, you pull up this image, obviously Madam Web is in the background, but in front of her are three Spider Women. You do a Spider-Woman movie. You don't do a Madam Web movie. Because even if you grew up, for people that have familiarity with Madam Web, it is probably from the animated series. And Madam Web did not look like Dakota Johnson. So you throw that away. Just throw it away and pick a Spider-Woman, a Jessica Drew.
Yeah, which one
Gwen
do you
Stacy, pick. I actually don't care. I think probably based on audience familiarity, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this, Roxy. Stacy, even though she's from an alternate universe, she's not even technically, there are Spider Women that get to hang out with Peter Parker. She's not typically one of them, but from the Spider-Verse movies, and she's well known and she's popular. Put her in her own universe and do a Gwen Stacy Spider-Woman movie. Don't call her They've tried to call her Ghost Spider and shit. Cut that shit out. She's the Spider Woman of her universe. Fucking cut it out.
Do you think that Gwen Stacy could hold down a Spider-Verse better than anybody we've seen so far that they've attempted?
Yes. I think there's an
Better
argument.
than
I don't
Venom.
know that. I don't. Nah. I mean, here's the thing:
If we're never going to see Spider-Man.
that's the problem. I think that's something you need to get out of the way of. I think, truthfully, if Sony wants this to work, they need to pick a brain trust as strong as either Kevin Feige or James Gunn. You need to find your James Gunn, and I say him because he came in as a replacement, right? And it's somebody that Kevin Feige will like and trust and be willing to work with. And you need to get on the same page as Marvel, where it's like, okay, we are going to share Peter Parker with you, but he's going to show up in our movies, and the other movies don't need to touch MCU stuff. But the implication is that they run in the same streets as Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Okay, so it obviously that we are dream world, dreamcast,
Yes.
theorizing, but do you think that there is a real shot that Feige says yes to that?
I think for one, you still have the keys to Peter Parker, so you have leverage. You and theoretically, you also want to make good movies, right? Part of the issue we're having, like, listen, making a Craven movie is stupid, but if it was great, we'd all eat our words. You know what I mean?
What's the deal with Miles? In terms of
They have them. That's another. So I think you have a couple options here. One is, why not do? Listen, Tom Holland, Peter Parker, he's hanging out with the MCU. He's their guy. Why not do Miles or Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, or Gwen Stacy? Why not? Why not do a live action one and either have them be in their own universes? Or I know Miles is alluded to in Homecoming, but traditionally, as seen in Spider-Verse, Miles kind of exists in his own universe. Why not? Have Miles be your guy. Listen, MCU has Peter Parker. We have Miles. You could build your whole universe around Miles. You want Venom to have a Spider-Man to fight? I want that to be Peter Parker because that's what I grew up with. But why not have it be Miles? Who cares? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you set up your Spider-Man 2099 movie. And then you build toward, like, we're going to see Miguel and Miles cross universes. That's what we're going to build towards. And because I think that's the other thing you need to just like Marvel built towards an event. I think if you're Sony, you're like, there are plenty of Spider-Man events. And you're like, we're going to build to one of our own where all of these disparate spider characters are going to interact, preferably with a Spider-Man, but at least with each other.
So what has been Sony's aversion to making Miles Morales their Spider-Man live action? Like, it's obviously worked extremely well for them in their animated movies,
Yeah.
where people have now a bigger understanding and more familiarity with Miles.
Mm-hmm.
So why not? Are they not allowed to simultaneously run a Spider-Man franchise with Miles while Disney is running?
That's a great
Peter
question.
Parker?
I have not heard anything to that effect. Maybe they're worried about, it could be any one of a number of things. Maybe they're worried about oversaturation. I don't think they're worried about that. But kind of the same conversations we're having with, like, too many Batman. Can you have two Batman and whatever?
Yeah, but that's one studio deciding whether they're fighting with themselves. This is Sony fighting for their lives.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I also wonder because, people like Avi Arad are still involved in that mix. And I don't have the book in front of me, but that MCU book, Ike Perlmutter's not a part of this conversation, but Avi Arad and Ike Perlmutter got along real well, and they worked together for a long time. Not exactly the most progressive voices in Hollywood. And so maybe there's this sense of like, well, Miles can't anchor his own live action movie.
I really feel like he could.
He absolutely could.
And I don't really see why not. And with just the popularity of the Spider-Verse movies and the popularity of the character of Spider-Man and the way that would open up doors for having Venom and not having it be fucking weird to have 3 Venom movies with no Spidey, except for that one bizarre post-credit where, like, we kind of reference and, like, possibly Michael Keaton.
The Michael Keaton Morbius one, that's one we're just gonna have to retcon out of existence. No, Michael Keaton is still over in the MCU. He's still in prison. He should show up in Brand New Day still in prison. When they like release Scorpion, he should be there just so that you can tell the audience like that, don't pay attention to Morbius.
Just,
that didn't happen.
Lack of forethought with that. I can't believe that made it to the screens and they were like, yeah, we'll just deal with this later. Like, what? Wait, what?
I can't believe Michael Keaton was like, sure. I would have been like, no, man, I'm not doing that shit.
I think
I'm not
they were
doing
like, money. And he was like, I don't really understand this universe anyway. Just sure, whatever you need.
It's kind of like that story where like Sean Connery was handed The Matrix and he's like, I don't get it. And then he was handed Lord of the Rings and he's like, I don't get it. So then when he was handed League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he's like, fine, I guess, because Lord of the Rings was great, Matrix was great. And you're like, no, Sean, you chose the wrong one.
No, that was
it's the wrong one.
Totally. Because some of these actors are just not like they are built to act, but this isn't their world really. So, but I do think that Miles Morales really could anchor this, and like you're saying, bring in Gwen Stacy or whoever.
Yeah.
I think that it's very aggressive to think that you could build an entire universe from the villains of non-known villains and never introduce the hero, like that was their plan in the first place. So
yes, I think
it could have worked. The movies were great, but they weren't. So now we have to flip that on its head because we can't replicate that and just try to do better this time. We need to change our strategy.
And the problem is we're coming at this from the wrong direction, which is typically what you do is when a character pops, you're like, oh, we're going to spin that guy off, as opposed to we're going to build this infrastructure around characters, because at least Marvel, when they did that, and even they are having trouble replicating it right now. They had Avengers. These are a group of characters that end up teaming up in the event. Like, it's built in. Whereas like the Sinister Six don't have their own book, man. They're called the Sinister Six. The name's lame. Like, you're not going to build you're not going to do it. You're not going to build a Sinister Six movie. Nobody cares about that, especially not if Spider-Man's not going to show up in it. Like, what are you doing? So I think I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm going to see if I don't want to eat the lunch of some of these questions we got. I don't think they do. Okay, so here's my thoughts, Roxy. I think either A, and it feels like they're dipping a toe in it with that Spider Noir show, which is
that's
also
what I was going to ask you about, DJ. Like,
choice.
Where does that leave us with Spider Noir?
Yeah. So if the one option is we just do Spider people. Here's your Miguel Spider-Man 2099 movie. Here's your Miles movie. Here's your Gwen movie.
I kind of like that idea, actually.
I don't hate it because here's the thing with that too is all of those characters are headliners and all of them are Spider-Men.
And then you don't have to think too much about how they interact with each other until just hit singles for a little bit. And I'm interested in each of these characters and tell compelling stories, and I'll watch.
Maybe if it does well, maybe Tom Holland will get to hang out with those people. Right. And you could do your own live action. We already did a little live action Spider-Verse with No Way Home, but like with the other characters. And then you could bring back Toby or Andrew or whatever. The other option, if you're saying, no, we don't want to dilute stuff with too many spider people, which I kind of can't imagine having that conversation. Sony thinking that, but whatever. Let's say that's what they're thinking. And we're like, we have all these other characters. And then I'd be in the room and I'd be like, yeah, but none of them are, other than Black Cat. You could do a Black Cat. Other than that, Venom, right? None of these characters are really headliners. You could pull deep bench pulls because in the 90s, they used Spider-Man to launch off a bunch of characters that I assume Sony has the right to, like Night Watch, which is a character I have a lot of nostalgia for, but nobody else would know who the fuck I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
Yeah, like nobody, he had his own run. He had like a 12-issue run in the 90s. He looked cool. He was basically like, what if we took Spawn's costume but did a sci-fi thing with it? And he appears in Spider-Man. Annex. Roxy, are you familiar with Annex?
No.
No, of course you're not. Like, nobody knows who Annex is. But like, theoretically, you could do, if you wanted to, these are technically characters that had their own books for a minute and are heroes, and you could theoretically make movies with, maybe.
Okay.
Prowler, I think you could get away with it, especially if you brought Donald Glover in, because people know Prowler because they know Miles.
Yeah, and that would be really cool.
And if it was Donald Glover or Mahershala Ali, who voiced him in the movie, you're golden.
I mean, I can't imagine him wanting to do that, but...
What if but maybe he's so tired of the Blade stuff, he's like, fine, give me Prowler.
That would be insane.
But... Let's say I'm pitching all this stuff and they vetoed me on all this stuff. They're like, no, it needs to be these characters. I'm like, okay. Well, here's the thing. if you're gonna do, I go back to, you need to make nice with Marvel. You want to do more Venom movies without Tom Hardy? You need to introduce Venom in your Spider-Man movies and then spin him off onto his own thing. And then once he's spun off out of those movies, he's yours. And then the audience can decide how connected, or if Feige likes what you're doing with Venom, maybe he can show up in an event. But if he doesn't, he's off in his own little pocket. But it's the same Venom that you introduced in this hypothetical new Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy we're doing with Brand New Day, that we're starting with Brand New Day. And then any other character, you make the deal of like, if you're doing Morbius or Craven or whatever, Tom Holland Spider-Man shows up in the middle of that movie pretty much as much as he showed up in Civil War, right? He shows up to fight your guy, to be like, oh shit, I'm here, and then leaves. And then you just to justify the existence of this thing. And then you build towards, you say you're building towards, I'm shocked, Roxy. I'm shocked they didn't do this. I thought when they said Venom, Let There Be Carnage, I'm like, oh, they're going to build towards Maximum Carnage, because in the 90s there was a big event.
Everybody thought that. And
where Spider-Man and Venom have to team up, because that's the point of Carnage. The reason Carnage exists is so Spider-Man and Venom can team up with a bunch of other characters to fight Carnage and his group of whatevers. And then they killed Carnage and Let There Be Carnage. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing over here? What's the plan? Yeah. And so you say we're going to build towards a big event, like a Maximum Carnage event, where Tom Holland Spider-Man teams up with our Venom to fight Carnage. And then the other thing, if you want to do Morbius, because I don't actually, I was thinking about this last night. I'm like, I actually do have a way that you could do Morbius, even though I do think that brand is tainted, possibly beyond salvaging.
I don't think that you think that. I think that it is that, but yes.
Yeah. You get a new actor, obviously. You probably Incredible Hulk it, where like you don't really you don't redo the origin. You don't step on anything that happened in Morbius, but you don't acknowledge it either. It's its own thing, but we're just not going to rehash it. And then you get Spider-Man in there. And if Marvel's like, you call up Feige, right? And you're like, no Spider-Man? Well, how about this? What do you guys are doing a midnight? Seems like you guys are building up to a Midnight Suns, a big, whatever you call them, Spirits of Vengeance, whatever you want to call it, with your supernatural guys. Wouldn't it be cool? Just like you were able to use Spider-Man Avengers, wouldn't it be cool if you got to use your premier vampire character, Morbius, as part of your Midnight Suns thing? So maybe you throw us a bone in our Morbius movie to set up that connection. What you doing with Blade? Can Blade show up in our Morbius movie? Because the original plan for Blade,
I think people are going to play nice a lot more than they are, but I like.
I'm saying if I'm Sony, you need to do whatever you can to grease the wheels.
Back,
yeah. You have to. If you're trying to save the sinking ship, if you're trying to save, you've got one of the most popular IPs in the industry, and you're floundering with it. But when you work with Marvel, guess what? You're making $1 billion, right? So you say, what are you guys doing with Blade? Because the original plan for Blade 2 was that it would be Blade versus Morbius. That's awesome. I don't give a fuck about Morbius. If you told me Morbius was fighting Blade in a movie, I'm watching that movie. And then I would imagine Feige would be like, God, don't even speak the words Blade to me. Like, okay, all right, I understand. You're figuring out what you're doing with Mahershala Ali, all that stuff. I understand. But what are you doing with, remember that special you did with Werewolf by Night? What are you doing with that guy? Maybe Werewolf by Night, Man-Thing, maybe they can show up in a Morbius movie. And then suddenly your Morbius is connected to the Spirit of Vengeance, Midnight Suns, whatever you call it, thing. Now you've got fans like me. I'm a little bit more interested now. What are we doing with Morbius? He could show up in Midnight Suns. Tell me more. You know what I mean?
I do think though that you risk pissing off the casual fans so much to being like, what's the homework I have to do to watch this? It's not even part of this thing. That's what?
Well, this connects to something I've been saying Marvel should be doing for a while now, because the comics have different groups have different editors. So there's an editor in charge of X-Men, and there's an editor in charge of all the Spider-Man books, and there's an editor in charge of the Avengers books. And I think Feige, it seems like, reading that MCU book and what I've seen, is stretched really thin. And I think it sounds like he's got people under him that he trusts, and he's like, you should, especially now that you have X-Men. X-Men's kind of its own studio. I'm going to hand this off to this guy I trust. He's in charge of the X-Men group. Yeah. If I'm Kevin Feige, I only care about it. I'm going to check in to make sure they're not breaking it, but I only care once X-Men is going to cross over for our next big Avengers event. Otherwise, you're off on your own. I'm not going to figure that stuff out. And so in a way, that's how you treat, even though Sony's another studio, that you treat them like they're another editor. They're their editor of the Spider-Man group. And I would imagine if I'm Feige, obviously I want to use Spider-Man, but I'd want to use some of those other, I'm a 90s kid, so of course I want to use Venom. I want to see Venom in that shit. Cast Alan Richardson as Venom. I'm sold, man.
That's who you want to be Venom?
Yeah, because he looks like Eddie Brock in the comics. He's jacked as shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think he'd be really, really good. I think he's a strong enough actor to anchor his own movie. He anchors Reacher. The
movie chops are amazing.
Yeah, and so it's like I would, if it were me, Roxy.
You're not going the comedy route.
I'm turning the comedy dial down quite a bit on Venom, if for no other reason to differentiate it from what we did with Tom Hardy. So that's if I'm in the Sony room, these are the stuff I'm throwing out there. I
like the single Spidey movies. I really like that. Or
I think either way.
Or I like using Miles to anchor things and just see how things go before we even go and pitch Feige on anything.
Yeah, I think you're right. And either way, it's like, how much money do you need to throw at Lord and Miller to have them be your James Gunn?
So as you just said, how much money? The other thing I think that's essential is if we're doing like single Spidey movies or whatever, like imagine if these movies could be under 50 mil each. Their chance of making back their money would be so much better. Especially if they're not a Venom or a Spider-Man, right? If you're talking about like Morbius or you're 100% right. What's the budget for Clayface? Whatever that is. 70, let's see. Yeah, whatever that is, do that. Because I saw the other day and then it was debunked, but I'm not sure. Christian told me that the Supergirl budget is 200 mil? Yeah, that's a lot of money. That's a really big ask. It's like you're setting it up for failure. Yeah, and it's especially a big ask now, post-pandemic, I'm not going to say superhero fatigue, but like just, let's get into some of these Discord questions real quick. Zakori asks, budget 40 mil. It's awesome. Yeah, do that. Zakori asks, who top 3 do you want to see play Morbius? What would you like the story to be if true? Let's just pick one. What's your pick for Morbius? The internet's pick seems to be David Dalsmachian, and I do think that he would be an excellent pick for this. Is it the thing that I want to see him do most next? No, but do I think he would nail it? Yes. Here's one that I think would be good. Mike Joyce says in the comments, Alexander Skarsgård is Morbius. That's the Skarsgård, right? Alexander, is he the... Yeah, he's not the one that does the show that we like. Yeah. But he would also... No, wait, that's the wrong Skarsgård. You're picking... It is the one that does the show that we like? He is the one that does Murderbot. Okay. What's the other Skarsgård? Hold on. Bill. Bill's the one you want. Bill's the Skarsgård you want for Morbius. Also, Roxy, I'll say this. When Tron Ares was out, somebody floated, like, why do we keep casting Jared Leto when, like, Manny Jacinto's right there? I'm like, oh. So, like, speaking of Morbius, I'm like, oh, maybe Manny Jacinto. Let's get him in more stuff. I do love him. Clementine, this isn't really a question. Non-zero chances an attempt to recourt Bad Bunny for the wrestler villain movie now that he's the hottest celebrity of the moment. I just want to mention that because you're implying here that he just became villain movie. He was supposed to be El Muerto or something. Sony's been trying to push him hard. That's why he's in Caught Stealing. He was in Bullet Train. I just mentioned it, Clementine, because your comment implies that he just became one of the hottest celebrities in the world, and that's not. It's years he's been huge. Jake Hefner, do you think Sony will ever realize that a Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe is a humongous fool's errand, or do they just not care about putting out quality superhero movies? I think they got I think you got to try. If you're Sony, you got to try, and you've got this whole IP mind. I think you got to try. It is kind of making a Craven movie is a fool's errand, but like we just talked about, with Miles or with Spider People, isn't a Spider-Man-less movie. Yes, franchise. True. Like, you're right. Good point. Both my pitches involve Spider-Man. That's a good point. Yes, correct. But I don't think that they realize that that's the key, is that you do need some Spider People. They seem to have been like, we don't need that. And it's like, no, you missed the mark on that for sure. Yeah. Handsome Ransom, this will be the last one. Is this just a cash grab, or is Sony actually making a genuine attempt to make something we care about? Is this Villainverse or another ragtag team of JSOC antiheroes? And will we ever see the F4 in the sewers? I feel like that's a comment to a line from the first episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series. But this is definitely a cash grab. That's pretty much all Hollywood is at this point. I don't think it's fair to call it a cash grab versus something we care about anymore, because we're only when we're talking about these big superhero franchises, we're only dealing with Marvel, Warner. We're only dealing with Disney, Warner Brothers, and Sony.
Yeah.
And the number one thing for all three of those companies, 100%, always has been, always will be their bottom line and making money.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a single movie that they put out,
Yes.
period, ever, that isn't quote unquote a cash grab.
Yes.
All they're trying to do is grab cash. Now, sometimes that aligns with making something that we care about, because when they make something we care about, they make more money. But it's not, they're not making it because they care that we care. They're making it because they know that if we care, we will pay to see.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's not just with this. But I think that if Rothman's quote told me anything, it's that he has no idea what direction they're going in yet. He knows that they're going to have to pick this back up because it's a moneymaker for them, hopefully, but he doesn't know in what direction yet. So yes, it will be picked up, but we have no take yet.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll have to find out. We'll all find out together. But those are some of our ideas. Let us know in the comments what you think. And what will get you your butt in the seat for a Morbius movie or any one of these little Sony tie-ins? What could Sony do to get your booty in the seat to see their Spider-Man-less or Spider-Man adjacent movies? Roxy, where can the kids find what you're working on?
You guys can find me everywhere at Roxy Stryer. Follow me on social media. I have a couple of different potential sponsorship things that I really need coming forward soon. So if you can like my stuff and comment on it so that I can boost my numbers, it's very helpful. Thank you guys so much.
Links in the description. Go support. Go support. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. If you check out my personal channel, I do a show called Retroversity with Sal, where we just did The Suicide Squad, which is a movie I like quite a bit. And also on Patreon, Comic Pop and I are doing a joint show where we're going through all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies in chronological release order. On Comic Pop, we just did Iron Man 2. Coming up next on patreon.com/onlystupid answers is Thor. So stay tuned for that. I want to thank everybody that joined us live. We really appreciate you supporting us on the Patreon, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.